We continue with what the impact COVID-19 has had on Indigenous peoples worldwide. We look to some of our closest neighbouring countries in the Pacific Islands who are currently feeling a harsh economic bite, with tourism drying up across the region. Now, our Queensland correspondent Douglas Smith has more.
They're some of our closest neighbours, and so far they've been lucky to have dodged the worst of the coronavirus pandemic in terms of infections. But despite few cases in the Pacific region, the economic impact has been huge as borders closed and tourism stopped. Pacific Island nations now face a tough choice between a risky reopening to tourists and the very real threat of economic collapse. Liz PECHAN is the owner and co-founder of a boutique resort on Vanuatu's Efate Island.
Two things really that have impacted tourism here is jobs, employment, and also revenue to our government. And they ran a survey, and their survey showed that 70% of people in tourism directly had lost their jobs. Our income dried up straight away. And we had to unfortunately lay off 50% of our staff, which is really hard to do because they're pretty much family. Some of them have been with us since day one.
At the latest count, there are just over 260 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Pacific Island countries, with 7 deaths from the disease. Australia is among the countries delivering help and has repurposed a significant amount of aid set aside for natural disasters so that it could address the impact of COVID-19. The first of the Australian test kits was shipped to Fiji, Kiribati, Papua New Guinea and Nauru last week through what the government calls a humanitarian door. More supplies will reach a further 9 Pacific Island countries in the coming fortnight. Talks are underway between Australia and New Zealand to create a trans-Tasman bubble and establish a COVID-19 safe travel zone which would benefit both economies. But it's unlikely that Pacific Island nations will be included. Liz PECHAN says it's crucial that governments like hers get a seat at the table.
I would really love the people in authority, which is our government, to join that conversation and to ask that Vanuatu be considered as part of that. We need to ensure that all our protocols are in place, that we're ready for that time if it comes.
At home in Australia, Dr. Tess Newton Cain is a specialist in Pacific affairs and has lived in Vanuatu for more than 20 years. It was partly her idea to expand the trans-Tasman bubble to the Pacific region to help with the economic impact, but she says reactions have been mixed.
We've heard a minister in Papua New Guinea say, yes, we definitely want to be part of that, and it should be, there should be a corridor between Moresby and Brisbane, and, very, very strongly supportive of his country being involved, as is the Attorney General of Fiji. Elsewhere, people have been a bit more cautious. So the Health Minister of Tonga has said that if Tonga were to open its borders, they would be looking at having a bubble with countries where there are no infections. So that wouldn't include Australia and New Zealand, but it might include Vanuatu and Samoa, for example. As things currently stand, the primary concern for people is protection of populations from infection risk.
For now, the people of these small island nations seem to be looking after one another, using a bartering system, exchanging food and gifts.
I think it's really interesting. It started in Fiji, and apparently there are 100,000 people involved in it in Fiji. And it's now replicated itself in Vanuatu, in Samoa, and I think possibly in Papua New Guinea. And it's a really interesting blend of how societies and communities in these countries have operated for centuries, which is we share what we have, and if you have a flood in your village, we'll send you food, and then in a couple of years' time, you'll look after us.
Like much of the world, the future is uncertain and economies hang in the balance. In the meantime, many in these island nations will lean on the good graces and generosity of each other, but hopefully not for too long. Douglas Smith, NITV.